From time to time in Master New Testament Greek, we sit down with professors and authors and ask them questions about the works they've been working on and also the material that they've been publishing. And a number of months ago, we sat down with Dr. Rob Plummer, and the members of Master New Testament Greek put some questions to him. And in this video, we're going to look at a couple of those questions, some of which are really interesting, and provide his answers to those questions. Hi, I'm Daryl Burling from Master New Testament Greek, and each week I help people just like you master the Greek of the New Testament one step at a time. And if that sounds like you, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below and then hit the notify bell to be notified of when new videos are released. So from time to time, we do sit down in Master New Testament Greek with professors and people who have written books and things like that, just to talk through what is it that drives them and get an understanding of their work and what it is that they've been working on. And we sat down with Dr. Rob Plummer a little while ago as a group, and we had a number of questions. Members of Master New Testament Greek gave me questions, which I then went and asked Dr. Plummer. Some of these questions were questions about him personally. Some of them were questions more related to Greek. One of the things about Dr. Plummer is that he understands that Greek is a responsibility that we share, that a privilege in a way that we have if we can learn the language. And so he carries himself with this. And so one of the questions was, who was it? What are some of the influences and the authors who have influenced him in this way by placing upon him this feeling of responsibility? Here's his answer.
Well, thinking about influences on me, I mean, you're quite honestly, I feel a little bit impoverished when we talk about historic authors informing me in the way that perhaps some of my colleagues could speak of. I think about my respected colleague Michael Haykin, and you almost feel like he hangs out with Jonathan Edwards. You know, he knows all these Puritans who I've never even heard of, you know, and read their diaries. And I wish I could tell you that I had done that, but I have not. I mean, I think that for me, speaking about influence, especially looking, you know, over the course of my education and subsequently, people more recent have influenced me probably more. So like Don Carson, I love D.A. Carson, his writings. I think he's just tied to the text. He allows the text to, you know, he just bows before the authority of the text. So I think of living scholars, maybe of all scholars that I've read, he's influenced me some of the most. Now, I do love reading historic Christian work. I mean, I love Luther. I love reading Luther. I'm always challenged by him. He's so provocative. I love C.S. Lewis. Not that I agree with everything C.S. Lewis said, because, you know, you read C.S. Lewis, you're like, oh, this is so good, so good. And then he's like, maybe there's purgatory. You're like, no, there's not purgatory. Stop it.
Yeah.
You know, but I love he's the way he can phrase things. Like when I read C.S. Lewis, I find that then when I'm walking around, I'm thinking about stuff more than something I'm just read and leave behind. But I feel, I mean, I have on my shelves over here, I see it almost every day, the complete collected works of Jonathan Edwards, which I think leaves out some of his works, but at the time it was printed, you know, it's these 2 huge volumes. And I feel guilty for not reading it every time I see it. But I've read some Jonathan Edwards, but I'm not, I wish I were one of these people who could, you know, I just feel like I know Augustine. Yeah, I've read quite a bit of Augustine, but I just not the historic theologian, his theological historian like Greg Allison or Michael Haykin or someone like that is. I did a few years ago do a book with a friend, Matt Haste, called Held in Honor, Wisdom for Your Marriage from Voices in the Past. That was a lot of fun because we found 50 quotes spread all throughout the 2,000 years of church history, beginning in the first century, going all the way to John Piper, just kind of like nail you, bam, kick you in the stomach. This is what marriage is about, paragraphs. And so I love that's possibly the favorite of the books I've written or co-written or edited. That's maybe my favorite. Maybe because half of it is not written by me, because it's just the words of Luther and Edwards and Augustine and Ignatius and all these people. And there's a depth, like it's one thing to get marriage advice from a 47-year-old. You're like, okay. Or you look a bit older than I am, Dennis. You get marriage advice from someone who's been married 40 years. You're like, wow, but how about someone who lived 1,500 years ago, and their life didn't end in some kind of public scandal, but there's this weight to it that I really like.
Another question that came up was, other than your job, what is it that drives you and motivates you to continue to grow your understanding of Greek? And this really goes to the question of motivation.
Yeah, that's funny. The first clause there, other than your job, and it is, my goodness, I do have a great privilege in that my employment is to do what I love to do. Like we can't let this get out because someone might stop paying me. But I love to read the Greek New Testament, think about it. Dennis, you said you're doing the daily dose. I have this some of you may be familiar. I have this little screencast where I read through Greek, and I don't get any compensation for that. I mean, we receive donations to pay for fees, internet, email, service fees, and that kind of stuff. But I'm doing it for free because I love it. I do love it. And so yeah, I mean, the Bible is the Word of God, and there's just something beautiful and rich and nourishing about reading the scriptures in the original language. People who don't have that opportunity, we have wonderful translations. So I'm not in any way disparaging that if someone doesn't have the opportunity. But if we do, what fun! What fun!
Sometimes when you learn a language, it takes a little while to get to know how the language works. And so this next question was asked by somebody who also speaks French. And he asked this question, what's the benefit of learning Greek so well that translation takes no effort? This is a great question. So listen to how Dr. Plummer responds.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's just recognizing that we're all on a lifetime journey to read the Bible better in Greek and Hebrew. And it's not going to come instantaneously. I've found for many students who are frustrated with their fluency, like they wish they could read easier, one of the things that really helps is we do this 1-week boot camp on campus where you just 4.5 days, you're in the classroom. I make you read over and over and over some of the same text. And something happens about the second or third day for students. They're like, I can read this and I understand it, And I think it's just many of us, we don't have the margin in our lives to read enough text or to read them long enough that we develop that fluency. So some of the people you saw at SBL, I mean, one of the reasons that they could do that is that's their job, right? They're paid to read the Bible and think about it, and so they have that privilege, that responsibility. I think one of the benefits as we grow, all of us are growing in fluency and ability. One of the benefits of that is the easier we can read it, the more we can just soak in the meaning and not be tripped up by, whoa, what is that word? Or that's strange. What is that thing doing there? So we're not tripped up by the grammar. We're focusing on just understanding the meaning and responding to it. So increased fluency leads to increased. It's like sounds like you read French. So when you're reading French, you're not thinking, oh, is this a passé simple? Is this imparfait? You just are reading it. You're just thinking about what it's meaning. And it's hard to do that. I mean, Greek, unless you speak modern Greek, we are learning to read, and modern Greek is different from biblical Greek. There are different auxiliary like uses of the verb, and they create tenses that we don't have it. So it's a different animal, but we're learning to read a language that we don't speak to people. We're not going around asking, how's it going? Where's the bathroom? We don't say those things. Whereas if you speak French, you say, ça va, où est la toilette? You know how you could just immediately say those things. And so I wish our brains could be, and I know there are groups that try to do Koine as a living language, but then how do you keep speaking it without without being some weirdo who only talks to 5 other people on the internet. You like, how do you, I don't know. It's just, so I think if we can incorporate more living language elements in teaching biblical Greek, it would be great. But yeah. So I'm commiserating with your say. I wish I could, read Greek like I read French. Sort of my brain would be wired for that more. That's I think a desire a lot of people have.
Now, this raised a question. During the time that Dr. Plummer was answering this question, someone else sent me a message asking a follow-up question. That question, I think, is a really important question today, and that is, what is the value of being able to speak Greek fluently? And this goes to these groups of people that are around today who are really advocating learning to speak and converse in Koine Greek. And so this is a really great question. Here, listen to Dr. Plummer and his response to this question.
I just had a colleague who teaches Latin here at the seminary who went to a camp where they have to sign something where they'll only speak Latin for the whole week. And he was doing it more to investigate how this works, how to incorporate some of that into his own teaching. Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to it. I think it's great to I think learning. It is true your brain is wired differently when you're speaking a language as opposed to just reading it. But I also recognize just the limitations of time and ability and communities that we live in. And so I'm inclined to think that while you're going to have some of these groups that, come here for a week or two and speak Koine, the way that's going to survive is probably a little bit more of incorporating parts of it. Like I teach my students when they learn vocabulary to speak it out loud, to act it out, like to act it. So they're using their body, they're using their voice. But I think it probably unrealistic to think about them having a communication about politics in Koine Greek. And let's be honest. I mean, that's not the way biblical languages have been taught for hundreds and hundreds of years. Yes, Latin. Latin was a living language, but even those guys were not speaking in Koine Greek or in Hebrew if they knew Hebrew. They did not learn them as living languages. But I mean, I wish we could go on a time machine and learn to speak Koine, and let it soak into us. But it's just recognizing the limitation, chronological and natural physiological limitations that we have, how we learn and who we're around.
So I hope you found those helpful. Thank you so much to Dr. Plummer, who's been not only willing to have this Q&A with us, but also has been a great supporter of Master New Testament Greek. Very thankful for all his support. And if you found this helpful, then I encourage you, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below and click the notify bell. And if you're interested in learning more about Greek, then I want to encourage you to head to masterntgreek.com/roadmap. And this is going to give you a roadmap to mastery, fluency of the Greek New Testament. Hope you've enjoyed this. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you then.